Hi guys, welcome back to the Spiritual Lounge with Courtney
and Nina.
Thanks for joining us here today. We're excited to have you in our little matching spooky pajamas.
Tis the season.
Because let's be real, even though it's after Halloween, we love spooky season. Like, it's an all year thing for us.
It's seasonless.
Yes. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I still will decorate for Christmas, and I love Christmas, but in my heart and soul,
Halloween
spooky
forever.
Season. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, today we wanted to chat a little bit more about timeline jumping and kind of what that's like. I'll be real. I had my first timeline jump that I knew about or experienced last week with that crazy full moon. I feel like that was just the most insane energy. And I know you've had some experiences. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. I know that maybe
it's a buzzword, but
Yes.
there's also not a lot of information on like what is a timeline, what is like quantum leaps, timeline jumping, all these things. It's like
all on
buzzwords.
socials. And it's like, manifest this, change your entire life, timeline jump, do this, follow my 7 steps to do it. And you're like, sorry, getting really comfy again.
Right.
But like, I feel like there's such a thing with that where, you know, you feel like, oh, what do I have to do to timeline jump? And it's like, you don't just like bring it out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I can give you also
please.
a little overview on how I view timelines as a psychic medium. What I do for a living is essentially read people's timelines. You're just reading the energy. And a timeline is what you're currently like, it's a stream of energy that you're linked into, kind of like you're plugged into that. And there are certain outcomes that are very probable with specific timelines.
But is it almost like the vibration? So it's like almost like if you hit a higher vibration, you...
And so, for example, if you are currently doing a lot of work on yourself regarding, like, let's say love, right? You're manifesting your soul partner and you're putting in the work. Well, you're linking up to a timeline that is a very different type of partner who's available to you than if you are not doing the work on yourself.
Well, also I think just doing low vibration things, right? And I think there's a piece of that where, as much as I would love to say it's not, like drinking a lot of alcohol is like low vibration. Totally. Don't get me wrong, still love my glass of champagne. But, you know, it's like it brings down your vibe. And so spending more time, it sounds like the way you're explaining this more time you're spending in a higher vibration or going through healing
and
modalities.
It's not necessarily like, because you can be in timelines that are very low vibrational too. And so when you're kind of unconsciously living life, it's really going to go to programming you had from childhood and the kind of genetics that you have. That's going to be kind of what you're going to revert to.
Well, think about that. It's like programming through like school. Like think about when you go to high school, right? Like you're pretty much trained when you're a kid to like go to school, follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do, go to college. After college, get a job, work in the corporate world, try to climb your way up the ladder. Like so fell into that. But like changing that and taking a step out of it.
And so when you're like applying that to timelines, a lot of people's stuff goes very deep because it's literally our DNA holds like 15 generations.
Oh my gosh.
Which is roughly 500 years. So if you're thinking about things, in the last 500 years, your like direct family line has probably gone through a lot of stuff. You know, the world was really a harsh place back in the day too. And so these are the things that are literally encoded in our DNA. And so when we come into this lifetime, you know, regardless of your beliefs on
how you got here,
incarnations, that kind of thing.
Whole nother story for that.
The kind of timelines that are most probable are going to be the ones that are kind of coded into your DNA. So when you're on a spiritual path, you're opening up a whole like treasure trove of options because when you're consciously living, you can consciously make a choice to align to a different timeline. And when you have a timeline shift, that's one of those moments where you're like,
all right, everything
damn,
goes.
like this is going somewhere different. And I 100%. Actively chose this.
It's almost like the way I love how you're explaining this because the way that I've always thought about it is like, you know, say you grew up in a certain like tax bracket or your parents did a certain thing. You know, they always have that saying like the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
That's 100%.
And I feel like that 100%. Is like so, you know, kind of ingrained in our society, right? And so kind of what we're talking about here is like when you decided to go through like the hard work and you decide like, okay, like I'm going to work on myself and what am I projecting, and going into this whole thing, that's when, you know, you kind of, these little different timeline shifts come up, and then you're like, oh, like I can jump this. And, you know, it's rewarding, but it's also, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, someone was telling me you have to like accept the timeline when it comes up and keep like when the timeline shift happens, you're like kind of in this transitional phase, and you have to kind of like keep aligning with that timeline to keep moving forward on that timeline.
100%. Because what happens is it's not yet habit, and it's not yet comfortable. The nervous system is probably freaking out a little bit, so that would be a great opportunity to do a sound bath.
Yes. Well, speaking of that,
or get a tarot reading to just kind of encourage you to stay on that path.
I love it.
You know, we get triggered by things, and when we're going to new levels, even though it might be a really positive thing in what we truly want for ourselves, the unknown is very scary.
It is.
And going back to that conversation about genetics, if you have a lot of trauma in your family line, if you have poverty in your family line, if you've just, you know, generations of your family grew up in war zones, things like that.
That sits in you.
It does. And that's all like root chakra stuff too. That's that security, that safety. And when that starts feeling a little bit
funky.
Exactly.
You feel like flighty, I feel like. At least how I feel. I feel like
and
I'm
you can totally panic. This is where self-sabotage comes in. 100%. But if that's like what you're going through right now, and you feel like, okay, I am like making changes in my life, I'm aligning to what I truly want, I'm doing the work. Why isn't this feeling good? My advice is just understand that this is part of the process. And don't be so hard on yourself, first of all. Like, you're really not going backwards, even if maybe you make a choice that isn't in alignment with the timeline that you ultimately want. It's all just a lesson. It's all just more experiences, and it's all taking you to ultimately, you know, where you can be.
It's fascinating. I definitely want to dive into our experiences here. Let's take a really quick pause here. We'll get you guys grounded, brought back into the, you know, into the earth, into this energy, and we'll be back in a few moments for you guys. We'll dive into our stories here. Hello, and thank you for joining me for this mindful moment. We'll begin by closing down our eyes and taking a few deep breaths. In through your nose and out through your mouth, and in through your nose and out through your mouth. As this fall season is in full swing, the air has become chilly. We're nearing towards more of the holiday season, and the hustle and bustle of life is in full swing. Let's take a few moments to be present in the moment, to allow ourselves to enjoy this season. Maybe take a beautiful walk as the leaves are changing, grabbing a coffee or tea with some friends, and really enjoying these beautiful evenings as the weather cools down. Maybe even sitting around the fireplace or fire pit and just watching the fire on a relaxing evening.
as we embrace the seasons changing and the weather. Cooler nights are coming. It's a time for deep rest and introspective. Take some time to sleep and rest, to really enjoy the holiday season, and to pause in the moment to enjoy this time of year. Start to wiggle your fingers and toes, blink open your eyes, and rejoin me in the room. I hope you enjoyed this mindful moment, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Hey guys, we're back. We hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully you were able to ground in and feel better. Where we left off was chatting a little bit about our timeline shifts, things that we've had happen. Yeah. I definitely had the first one that I
recognized. You had a recent one. You want to start with that?
I'll start with that. Yeah. So was it last week we had like a super full moon, and was it in Aries?
Yeah. So that's intense energy. That's like, like
I feel like people were definitely interesting out there. Yeah. You could probably tell that stories being in a shop, like people walking in. Yeah. But so like I think it was a couple of days after, maybe a day or two after, I popped into a Pilates class, and I do Pilates several times a week. And I feel like I got in the studio, we were on like the reformer for the class, and I laid down, and I swear it was like I blinked and I was like 45 minutes into the class. And I felt like the best way to describe it is almost like when you're meditating or like you're in a really boring meeting and you kind of just zone out. Like, you know, you're there, you're doing all the moves, you're involved. Like I was out of breath. Like I wasn't just like,
I am getting a workout here.
But it was like, it felt very different. And it was interesting because here in Arizona, we get sunlight all the time and the heat in the summertime. And it was those couple days we had last week that we had like cooler weather, and it was like raining.
Wasn't that the weirdest thing too? Like right after an eclipse, when the weather changes like that, you know there is big energetic shifts with like the earth itself.
Yeah.
And then,
it like took me to this whole other level. And it honestly, this is so weird to say, but I feel like it took me back to like elementary school. And like I grew up in the Midwest, and so like all the big trees and like that kind of like gloomy weather, but it was like this sounds weird to say, but like almost like a pure time in my life.
Yeah.
And that was very like high vibe. Yeah. And wow, don't love saying high vibe. But this sounds so weird coming out of my mouth.
I love it.
But it was like, it was an experience. And I feel like I sat there for the 45 minutes when I like opened, and I was like, oh my God, like I feel like everything just shifted. And after that, it was like I was craving different food and I was looking at things differently. And I literally came back. What is it like? There's some spiritual guy that like closes his eyes and like draws.
Oh yeah, automatic writing.
Yes, it was like automatic writing. I came back and I feel like I was like automatic writing and like drawing things. Yeah, and I was like, who is this?
Like just a pure channel where it was just coming through. Yeah.
And I haven't had that before. And so it was like really fascinating to go through this experience. And I feel like, you know, people talk about like, timeline shifting and doing these different things. And you know, you work with different spiritual people, and to be honest, like, I think they do help out with the ancestor stuff, and they clear different things, and they change your timeline. But feeling it yourself and going through it is such a different experience.
Because it's hard to explain energy to people. Like, you know this as a sound bath practitioner.
Yes.
They're like, what? To explain what's happening, it's like someone has to feel it.
Yes.
To really,
And I think that's the thing, like, and a little quick sidebar here, like I started off doing a little bit of Reiki. I was like, okay, I'm meditating, whatever. And I feel like explaining that to people was so complicated. They're like, first, what is a chakra? How does this work?
It's like a Kundalini, energy thing. It's like, wait, there's a serpent of energy that's going through up your spine?
And it's like, what? Even a spiritual girl is chatting about it. It's like, I could call Nina and be like, hey, here's what's going on. But most people in my life are like, I'm like, what? I don't really, it's like hard to share that. Yeah. So I also just want to say, like, you know, hopefully you have girlfriends. We're always here to chat. Like, feel free to comment if you've been through any awesome timeline shifts.
Yeah, and follow us on social media too, because all of our information is always linked in show notes.
Yes.
But we're both active on there, and
but we're like with the energy, you know. And then we were talking about this too. You know, when it comes to like me playing the bowls and you doing tarot, you're like reading the energy that's in the room, and somebody who isn't super into energy, you can still take part in all of these things.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the same thing with the timeline is it can still happen to you and you can still go through these changes, but maybe you weren't as highly connected into it and feeling it in that moment. And so
so give yourself a lot of grace with it too. Like if you're feeling like you're not having these crazy wild experiences, keep going, because it's
been years to get us to this point.
Exactly.
So it's not like
and it's like
overnight.
The longer you've been, not to be super cheesy here about like the Matrix, but like if you've been plugged into just a very cut and dry 3D existence for, decades.
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight. And also, it's a good thing it doesn't happen overnight, because that would be way too overwhelming.
Yes.
So
it's intense. Yeah. Like, I think I slept for like a day and a half after that. Like, I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm all excited. And then I was like, I'm exhausted. My husband's like, did you nap today? I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Like, and I'm still tired. I want to go to bed at 8 o'clock.
I'm still going to bed early. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your experience with timeline shifts.
So probably my most noticeable experience with that was, I think it was either 2018 or 2019. I was in Sedona. I have this secret spot in Sedona, which I'm going to take you to.
Yes.
Secret spot, always good.
They have just such great energy, like the vortexes in different places. Oh, it's just amazing town.
It is. And this one's nice because you're very secluded. You never run into other people, but you don't have to hike 10 miles to get there.
Honestly, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh shit, if you're going to take me this long ass hike, not my jam.
No, this is like maybe a 20-minute walk. It's very easy, and it's gorgeous. It's near a vortex as well, and you can always tell in Sedona when you're near a vortex, because the juniper trees in particular, the trunks are very gnarled and twisted. That's the sign of a vortex.
They're amazing.
Yeah, if you haven't been to Sedona, you need to get there.
Maybe someday we'll do a little retreat there or something.
Yes,
we're not far from it.
It really does. Yeah. So I've been to this spot so many times over the years. I pretty much go there every time I'm in Sedona.
Why not?
Why not, right? And I was there. I didn't it was the weirdest thing too, because I meant to sometimes I would take a journal up there and just journal, right?
You'll see people bringing crystals.
Totally. And charge them on the red rocks.
Which, hey, totally get
exactly. But for some reason I didn't bring my journal there, and I was just kind of sitting there, and I knew what time I had arrived there. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be out here very long, right? I just wasn't feeling it. So I didn't have my phone out too, because I was just very in the moment, just kind of chill. It was winter time here in Arizona, but it was a sunny day, so it's just crisp weather. The desert, you know how it smells. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. You have to experience
after you've been through the summer here, the winter.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I guess I'm just not meant to be here very long today. I'm just not feeling it. So I walked back to the car, right? And turns out I'd been there for 2 hours, and it felt like 15, 20 minutes tops. And it was weird. I was like, I completely lost 2 hours or an hour and a half of time. And, I felt like I was very much, going through a lot at that time, trying to step more into who I am, publicly kind of owning it a bit more.
Which is such a big thing.
It's
like the witch's wound kind of deal of owning 100%. Who you are.
Yeah. That's a
whole other podcast.
We need to make an episode on that for sure. But I was really struggling with kind of letting myself be as spiritual as I am, because I didn't have anyone around me at that time. I had just what I call the normies, and I love them dearly, but it's hard when you don't have anyone to talk to you about this kind of stuff. And you're doing a lot of work, but it feels like nothing has materialized. In your reality yet.
Or it's very small things.
Yeah, where you're like, oh wow, a number synchronicity. Thanks. It is a big deal, because it is spirit giving you 100%. A little nod, but it's hard when it feels like everything is kind of a mess, and you're kind of going through it. Dark night of the soul vibes, for sure.
But I think it's a piece of it, right?
It is.
I think everyone who goes through the spiritual journey to really get on it, you have to.
And it does pass. That's the thing. It's if you're in that right now, where you feel like you've just been being hit with tons of crazy energy, you're healing stuff out, you're making new changes that align yourself to better timelines, more aligned timelines. And if you're in the process where it still doesn't feel great, it will. just give it time.
Yes.
Just keep walking.
Yes.
That's like my best advice.
I completely agree.
And yeah, so that little like out of time moment I had was very much me. I don't know. I feel like I received a lot of downloads.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
On what particularly? I don't know. I feel like it was more coding.
Like, yes.
You know, on a
deeper
like a
level.
Frequency, like activation level.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's like what it is. It's like you can't even say what definitively happened or not. Like you're just kind of there. You feel it though. It's unmistakable. You can't make it up. You can't
like
rationalize it either.
I feel like is like
and same thing. Like I wasn't like on any substances. Like I was just sitting, kind of meditating with you know, and just sort of sitting there. And I definitely had not sat there for like 2 hours. So but I did. But
seriously.
Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah. And
I feel like it's just such a unique journey, you know, as people go through this. And I think there's, you know, a really big piece of this as well where, like you were saying, just keep going, because I think, you know, as you kind of go through this journey, you have these moments where you're like, oh, like I've been really programmed in from everything from birth. And that's not wrong, right? Like there's science now that are coming out saying like, oh, like the mother's nervous system while she's pregnant in the first couple of years of your life, like helps set the child's nervous system. And that's where you feel like things start to kind of like mesh together with this, where it's like, I don't know, like I think about like inventions, right? Like when you go through like different things and it comes to people, I feel like it's kind of that same thing. It's like that download or the different things that are coming in. And so, you know.
And would you say now, because this one happened recently for you, would you say that you're now integrating a new timeline for yourself and making some new choices?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Like I feel like things came in.
You're coming from like a different perspective almost, right?
Yes. It almost, okay, the best way I can describe this is like I'm in the same room, but the room feels different or like looks a little bit different. It's almost like I've sat here a million times, but like it feels different now. And I don't know the best way to describe that besides like just saying that. And I think that's what's like most fascinating going through it is like, it doesn't have to be these massive things. It's not like all of a sudden something crazy happens. It's like, it is crazy, but it's like the little shift, right? The best way I can think of it too is describing it as like, you know, when you make a habit change, okay? So say like you start going to the gym. Like 1 week into it, you're not like rockin' bod.
No.
You know? But it's like taking those steps. And I think that kind of transfers into manifestations as well, which we could do a whole other thing on.
Oh my gosh, we should.
But
we
honestly,
both have so many wild stories on
But
that
on
one.
top of it, like the influencers out there, like unpopular opinion, are just like, to manifest things in your life, just like write it down and be happy.
Well, and again, I feel like it depends on like the timeline you've been linked with.
Yes.
Because if you come from a background, like a family line where there isn't a lot of trauma, there wasn't a lot of like tragedy or hardship, like you're kind of tuned into something totally different.
Yes.
And you know, when you see some people on there and they're like, oh, I just wrote down like what I wanted and then I got it like 2 days later and you're over here being like, I've been trying to manifest this for like 3 years.
Yes.
What on earth is going on here? Don't be so hard on yourself. I feel like that's what this conversation just keeps coming back to with the whole process of the spiritual journey, the manifestation journey, all of it is like there's a lot of like moving parts that go into this. It's different for everyone. If it's not happening like instantaneously,
don't freak out.
You're not like wrong. You're not doing it wrong. I would just say take a look at what you're actively choosing on a daily basis because Ollie agrees. That's gonna affect your timelines.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Well, we are gonna end here where Nina was gonna do a little tarot reading for us. Yeah. And I'm excited. So we'll see what's going on for this week. But thank you so much for joining us here today.
It was a fun conversation.
Yes, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to your Spiritual Lounge weekly tarot reading. Today we're going to be looking into what's in your timeline, since that was the conversation of today's video. And timelines are an interesting thing. Okay, can't even make this up. You got the 7 of Cups. This is showing that you have options, okay? I know for some of you it feels like you're backed into a corner. You don't have options, that you maybe have gone down a certain path and that's all there is for you now. You've invested too much time into it. Or, the 3D responsibilities of life are too much for you to make a change. Spirit is saying absolutely not. You have so many options. This is seriously the card of options. And it's showing a man looking and weighing out what he really wants to do. And that's what you're being encouraged to think about this week. It's not about what you've done in the past. It's about what actually feels aligned with you. What actually feels like it's calling to you, like it was meant for you. And it doesn't matter if this is something that is like totally out in left field, that you've never even considered before. Spirit is telling you that whatever it is, it's not crazy. It's on your heart for a reason. That's like a huge thing with manifestation and our desires. People are wondering if like it's okay to want this thing, if it's totally random to want this thing. If it's on your heart, if it's in your mind, it's there for a reason. It's not random. It's not just like something that, makes no sense. No, it's divinely placed there. And this is a card, and this reading as a whole is reminding you that you have options, that the world really is your oyster. That's one of my favorite sayings, because sometimes, like when we've been on a certain timeline for so long, we can feel really limited. Maybe life, there's chaotic things happening out in the world right now. But this is a nod from Spirit, a message from Spirit to really encourage you to remind yourself and to really claim the fact that you have options. Whatever you want really can be yours, and there are multiple timelines available for you. All of those things have good things in them as well. So this isn't a fearful message. This is a message of positive things are in your future, but you do have to take that first step to claim that energy. So again, your card of the week is the Seven of Cups, one of my favorites. It's a great energy card, really positive. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode.